1725. County Durham, England. A horse leans into its harness. Steam rises from its flanks in the morning cold. Behind it, wooden wheels creak against wooden rails, and the sound echoes across a valley that has never heard anything quite like this before. The rails themselves are simple oak beams laid parallel, worn smooth by friction, stretching toward the River Tyne like a promise carved into the earth. The horse doesn't know it's making history. Neither does the man walking beside it, guiding a wagon loaded with coal. But 3 centuries later, these same rails will still carry weight. Not coal anymore. Not horses. Tourists, mostly. Railway enthusiasts. People who want to touch something older than the Industrial Revolution itself. Older than steam locomotives. Older than the very concept of a railway, as most people understand it. This is the Tanfield Railway. And it refuses to die. The problem nobody saw coming in the early 1700s. England has a coal problem. Not a shortage, the opposite. The Northeast is rich with it. Black seams running through the earth like veins. Durham coal fields produce tons of the stuff every day. But getting it from pit to port? That's where everything breaks down. The roads are brutal. Mud in winter, dust in summer, and always rutted beyond reason by the constant passage of horse-drawn carts. A horse can pull maybe half a ton on those roads. Maybe. And it's slow. Backbreaking work that wears out animals, and men equal measure. Someone does the math. A horse pulling a wagon on wooden rails can move 4 tons. 8 times the load. Same horse. Same effort. The rails spread the weight, reduce friction, turn an impossible task into something almost elegant. The Tanfield Railway opens in 1725, connecting collieries to the Tyne. It's not the first waggonways have existed in Germany, in mines throughout Europe. But this one is different. This one is built to last, engineered with a precision that seems almost accidental given the era's technology. The rails are oak, cut to specification, laid on stone sleepers that distribute weight into the ground itself. And here's the thing nobody predicts. It works so well that people never replace it. The anatomy of survival stand on the Tanfield today and look down. The rails beneath your feet are wooden. Not preserved. Not reconstructed. Wooden. Some sections date to the 1720s. Replaced piecemeal over centuries, but never modernized. Never torn up for steel or iron. How does wood survive 300 years of industrial use? The answer is in the details. The Tanfield's engineers, and we should call them that, even though the word barely exists in 1725, understood load, distribution in ways that wouldn't be formalized for another century. The rails sit on stone sleeper blocks, each carved to cradle the oak beam. Rain runs off. Weight spreads. The wood doesn't rot because it doesn't sit in water. Doesn't crack because the load never concentrates in one spot. Each rail is roughly 6 inches square, 15 feet long, joined end to end with simple splices. The wagons that run on them have flanged wheels and other innovation that seems obvious in hindsight, but revolutionary at the time. The flanges keep the wagon on the rails even when the track curves or dips. No derailments. No wasted effort guiding the load. A blacksmith makes the wheels. Oak for the hubs, iron for the rims. And that flange a lip on the inner edge of each wheel that wraps under the rail like a hand gripping a pole. Gravity does the rest. The wagon stays true, and the horses? They pull in a rhythm that becomes muscle memory. One step, another, the wagon rolling behind them with a weight that would be impossible on open road, but feels almost manageable here. The wooden rails sing under the iron wheels, a low hum that becomes the soundtrack of Durham's industrial rise. When steam arrives, wood remains exactly 100 years after Tanfield opens. George Stephenson's locomotion, No One Runs, on the Stockton and Darlington Railway, 20 miles south. Steam power. Iron rails. The future, everyone says. The waggonway era is over, except that I send single quotes T. The Tanfield keeps running. Why? Economics, partly. Replacing wooden rails with iron costs money, requires capital investment, needs justification. The coal owners look at their functioning waggonway and ask a simple question. Why fix what isn't broken? But there's something else. The Tanfield's route is awkward. It twists through valleys, crosses inclines too steep for early locomotives, serves collieries scattered across terrain that doesn't suit the rigid geometry of steam railways. The wooden waggonway adapts where iron rails would demand earthworks, bridges, tunnels, so horses keep pulling. Wood keeps working. And the 19th century, the great age of steam rolls past without touching. Tanfield's essential character steam locomotives do arrive eventually, but they're modifications, not replacements. Small engines designed to work on wooden rails, pulling wagons that still have those original flanged wheels. The marriage is awkward, but functional. Wood groans under steam power in ways it never did under horses, but it holds other wagonways vanish. Converted to iron, abandoned for more modern routes, torn up when the coal runs out. The Tanfield survives, partly through luck, partly through geography, mostly through the sheer inertia of a system that works well enough that nobody wants the headache of replacing it. The Causey Arch, Defiance in stone a mile and a half west of Tanfield's main route. There's a bridge. Single arch, 70 feet high, spanning a gorge that would otherwise require a detour of several miles. Built in 1727, just 2 years after the railway opens, by a mason named Ralph Wood. It's the oldest surviving railway bridge in the world. Not in Britain. Not in Europe. The world stand beneath it and look up. The stones fit together without mortar, each one cut to bear weight through compression. The arch rises in a perfect curve, and when a wagon crosses above, the bridge doesn't flex, doesn't shift. It simply accepts the load and passes it down through stone to bedrock. Ralph Wood supposedly never builds another arch after this. Local legend says he fears it will collapse, that the span is too ambitious, the height too extreme. The legend is almost certainly false. Wood was a professional mason, not a nervous amateur. But the story persists because the bridge itself seems impossible. 70 feet high in 1727? Built for horse-drawn wagons on wooden rails? It shouldn't exist, and yet there it stands. The Causey Arch becomes a symbol, though nobody uses that word at the time. A symbol of what? Ambition, maybe. Permanence. The idea that infrastructure built well enough can outlast the technology it was designed to serve steam locomotives. Cross it. Diesel engines later. Tourists now. The arch doesn't care. It was built for horses, but it holds everything else just fine. The slow decline, nobody notices coal production in Durham, peaks in the late 19th century. Thousands of miners, dozens of pits, railways crisscrossing the landscape. The Tanfield is just one line among many, no longer unique, no longer cutting edge. Just there, functional, doing its job. Decline comes slowly. Not dramatic closure, but gradual abandonment. A colliery shuts down here, another there. Parts of the waggonway fall silent, the wooden rails left in place, because removing them costs more than they're worth. Weeds grow between the sleeper blocks. Oak beams weather to gray by the 1950s. Most of the line is dormant. The last commercial coal traffic runs in 1964, and that's supposed to be the end. Another defunct railway in a region littered with them. Tracks waiting for scrap merchants who never quite get around to tearing everything up. But here's what saves Tanfield. Enthusiasts who see something worth preserving. Revival, the second life a preservation society forms. Not to save the Tanfield, that implies it's in danger, and it isn't really. The rails are still there, the causey arch isn't going anywhere, and the route remains intact even if unused. What the preservationists want is to make it live again. To run trains on the world's oldest railway, to prove that 250-year-old infrastructure can still function. Clear vegetation from the rails. Repair sections where wood has finally failed. Source vintage rolling stock, not Tanfield originals. Those are long gone. But wagons and locomotives from other Northeast railways. Machines that fit the character, if not the exact history. The first preserved trains, run in 1982. Tourists show up. Not many at first. Railway preservation is niche, and a waggonway, even the oldest one, doesn't have the glamour of restored, steam locomotives or heritage diesel services. But word spreads. This isn't just another tourist railway with gift shops and cream teas. This is something older, stranger, more fundamental. A place where wooden rails still carry weight, where you can touch infrastructure from 1725 and feel it, solid beneath your fingers. The Preservation Society doesn't rebuild Tanfield. They maintain it. Critical difference. Rebuilding would mean replacement, modernization, improvement. Maintenance means keeping things as they are or should be. When a wooden rail finally fails beyond repair, they replace it with another wooden rail, cut to the same dimensions, fitted to the same stone sleepers. Is it authentic? Philosophically, maybe not. The ship of Theseus paradox. If you replace every plank, is it still the same ship? But pragmatically, absolutely. The route is original. The engineering principles are original. The experience of riding a train on wooden rails over stone sleepers through Durham. Countryside is as close to 1725 as anyone in the 21st century is likely to get. What? Wooden rails sound like Ride the Tanfield today. And the first thing you notice is the sound. Not the locomotive, that's just diesel rumble, mechanical and modern. The sound comes from beneath. Wooden rails under iron wheels create a rhythm, nothing like steel on steel. It's softer, more organic, almost musical. The rails flex slightly under load, and that flex translates into a kind of singing, a low vibration that travels through the carriage floor. The second thing you notice is the speed, or lack of it. 10 miles per hour, maybe 12 on straight sections. Not because the locomotive can't go faster, it can. But wooden rails have limits. Push them too hard and they split, crack, fail catastrophically. So the train ambles, and ambling feels appropriate. This is infrastructure built for horses, after all. Haste was never part of the design. The landscape rolls past slowly enough to examine. Woods where collieries once stood. Fields where waggonways once branched. The causey arch approaches like something from a dream. This impossible stone curve rising from the gorge. And the train crosses it at walking pace, while passengers crane their necks to see the drop. There's intimacy in slowness. Modern trains erase distance, turn travel into a blur. A Tanfield makes you present. Each curve, each section of track, each shift in grade demands attention. You're not covering ground. You're experiencing it. The engineering that shouldn't work, modern railway engineers visit Tanfield and struggle with what they see. By every contemporary standard, wooden rails are inadequate. They wear quickly, can't handle heavy loads, don't provide the smooth-running surface that steel offers. Iron replaced wood in the 1760s for good reason, and steel replaced iron in the 1850s for even better reasons. And yet, here's wood. Still working. The secret is in what the Tanfield doesn't try to do. It doesn't haul 100-ton locomotives at 60 miles per hour. Doesn't support passenger services on tight schedules. Doesn't pretend to be something it isn't. Instead, it operates within parameters that wooden rails can handle. Light loads, Low speeds, careful maintenance. But there's genius in those parameters. The original engineers understood material properties without modern science. They knew oak's grain structure, how it responds to stress, where it fails and where it holds. The rails are oriented so the grain runs lengthwise, maximizing strength in the direction of travel. The wheels are iron harder than wood, but the flanges are designed to spread load rather than concentrate it. Stone, sleeper blocks are spaced at intervals that prevent sagging. Too close and the rails don't flex naturally, leading to stress fractures. Too far apart and the flex becomes excessive, causing premature wear. The Tanfield spacing is empirical perfection, 4 feet, center to center, achieved through trial and observation decades before anyone formalized the math and maintenance. It's continuous but simple. Visual inspections catch cracks before they propagate. Damaged sections get swapped out during winter shutdowns. The system survives because people pay attention, because they understand that wood requires care in ways that steel doesn't. The economics of impossibility running. A heritage railway on wooden rails shouldn't make financial sense. Replacement parts cost more than modern equivalents. Skilled craftsmen who can work oak to waggonway specifications are rare. Insurance premiums are presumably terrifying. What underwriter wants to cover 300-year-old infrastructure? Yet the Tanfield operates. Volunteers mostly. Enthusiasts who donate time because they value preservation over profit. The railway charges admission, but barely breaks even, with ticket sales covering maintenance and little else. There's a purity in that. No corporate ownership, no franchise bidding, no government subsidy requiring operational targets. The Tanfield exists because people want it to exist, maintained by those who understand that some things have value beyond economics. But let's not romanticize too much. Money matters. Equipment needs replacing. The locomotive fleet ages. Tourism fluctuates with weather and economic conditions. The railway operates on a knife edge between sustainability and gradual decay, kept alive by dedication that could evaporate if key volunteers burn out or move on. The Causey Arch helps. It's a draw, a landmark that appears in guidebooks and history texts. People come to see the bridge and discover the railway. The combination ancient arch plus ancient rails creates a narrative that isolated elements couldn't match. Still, every year is a struggle. Modern Britain doesn't have space for anomalies like the Tanfield. Heritage railways are supposed to run mainline steam services or diesels, supposed to offer dining cars and special events. A waggonway with wooden rails and slow speeds doesn't fit the tourism model. It persists anyway, stubborn as the oak beneath the wheels. What's lost and what remains the Tanfield you can visit today is a fragment. The original waggonway stretched over 5 miles, connecting multiple collieries with transfer points and branch lines. Most of that is gone plowed under, built over, erased by 3 centuries of development. What remains is roughly 3 miles. Enough to run a meaningful service, but not enough to capture the full scope of what the system once was. The collieries are demolished. The coal staiths on the Tyne are industrial archaeology, if they exist at all. The economic network that justified the railway's construction has vanished completely. But the rails themselves? Still there. Still oak. Still resting on stone sleepers that were cut when George I was on the throne. There's something almost defiant about that. The purpose is gone, the context erased, the industry that funded everything extinct. Yet the infrastructure survives, repurposed from commerce to heritage, but structurally unchanged. Wooden rails that were supposed to last maybe 50 years have seen 300. And they're not done yet. The human element walk through, Tanfield's workshops, and you'll meet people who can explain exactly how a wooden rail wears, where to look for stress indicators, which oak varieties hold up best under load. They're not academics. They're volunteers, retired engineers, railway enthusiasts, local history buffs who've learned through doing. One of them might show you a rail they're replacing, point out the wear pattern smooth groove worn by wheels over decades, darkened by oil and coal dust. Explain how they'll cut the replacement to match, treating the wood against rot, fitting it so precisely that the joint barely shows. There's pride in that work. Not professional pride. None of these people get paid. Pride in maintaining something rare, something authentic, something that connects present to past in tangible ways. Talk to them long enough, and you'll hear frustration too. Bureaucratic hurdles around safety regulations, written for modern railways that don't account for 300-year-old systems. Difficulty sourcing materials. The constant need for fundraising. But underneath the complaints is commitment, the kind that keeps people showing up year after year, despite obstacles. That commitment is why the Tanfield exists. Not government mandate, not commercial viability. Just people who decided something was worth saving and put in the work to make it happen. What the future holds, the Tanfield Railway has survived 3 centuries, but nothing lasts forever. Wood rots, stone erodes. Enthusiast communities age and sometimes fail to recruit replacements. Climate change brings wetter winters that accelerate decay, yet there's optimism among the volunteers. Interest in industrial heritage is growing. Younger people join the Preservation Society, drawn by hands-on work and connection to history that feels genuine rather than performed. The railway wins grants for maintenance projects, gets featured in documentaries, appears on lists of Britain's hidden treasures, and the engineering keeps working. Every time a train crosses the Causey Arch, every time wheels roll on oak rails, it proves that the 1725 design is still valid. Not for modern purposes. Nobody's suggesting wooden rails for HS2, but valid within its own context, doing what it was built to do. There's a lesson in that, maybe. Not everything needs to be cutting edge. Not every technology needs replacing the moment something newer comes along. Sometimes, if you build it well enough, if you maintain it carefully enough, if you respect what it is, rather than trying to make it something else, it just keeps going. The world's oldest railway is still running. Not despite its wooden rails. Because of them, 1725 to now, the unbroken line 300. Years is an abstraction until you put your hand on an oak rail and feel the grain beneath your palm. Then it becomes real. The rail is cool, slightly rough, worn smooth where countless wheels have passed. Your fingers trace a groove that's been deepening since before the American Revolution, before the French Revolution, before Britain had an empire or America existed as a nation. The Tanfield Railway isn't a reconstruction. It's a survivor. And in an age where obsolescence is measured in months, where technology cycles through generations faster than people do, there's something almost rebellious about infrastructure that simply refuses to die. The horses are gone. The coal is gone. The economic logic that justified laying these rails in the first place has been extinct for over a century. But the rails remain, carrying tourists instead of cargo, powered by diesel instead of horses, maintained by volunteers instead of coal companies. And maybe that's the real story. Not that wooden rails can last 300 years, though. They can, apparently, but that people will keep them alive even when there's no practical reason to do so. The Tanfield survives because we want it to survive. Because there's value in connection, in continuity, in touching something that links us to people who lived and worked 3 centuries ago. They didn't build the Tanfield to be the oldest railway. They built it to move coal. That it's still here, still functioning, still remarkable, is almost accidental. But accidents can be beautiful. The train pulls back into Marley Hill Station. Wooden rails. stone sleepers. Oak and iron doing what they've done since 1725. Tomorrow, volunteers will inspect the track, replace a worn rail here, tighten a joint there, do the small, patient work that keeps history alive, and the day after tomorrow, the train will run again, because some